Monday, March 25th, 2013. I'm America's sweetheart and your host for the evening, Todd Klindt. Promotional consideration, limited commercial interruption, and all that due to the fine folks at my employer, Rackspace.com, though you can't see it, but oh, there we go, Rackspace on the monitor there. Rackspace.com. They bought me all this fancy swag, not counting the sheet. That was all me. But the flag, the monitor, the PowerPoint template, all that's all Rackspace. Not only can they do PowerPoint, they can do SharePoint as well. So you can go out to Rackspace.com/SharePoint and find all about SharePoint and how it works at Rackspace. And if you're curious about this new SharePoint 2013 thing, you can go out to Rackspace.com/SharePoint, and we have a trial, a 45-day trial. You can get in there and just play around with SharePoint 2013 a little bit. Find out where things are at. They've moved some stuff. I think you should try to figure out where they hid site settings. That's a good one. But for 45 days, you can putter around in SharePoint 2013 like it's your very own and find out what it's like and find out how awesome it is to be on one of Rackspace's servers like yours truly. So check out Rackspace.com and Rackspace.com/SharePoint. Okay, so tonight we're probably going to have a quick one. I don't have very many things in my notes. This should all go fairly quickly. First, this is a thing. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about the March 2013 patches that have come out for SharePoint 2013, and we're going to talk about that a little later in the Netcast also. But this topic comes up every now and then about what to do with your databases when you're applying patches. And so I thought I would cover this again just to kind of go over it. We get some new viewers once in a while, and they haven't had the pleasure that the rest of you have had of soaking in 150 previous of these netcasts and just absorbing every word that I say. And so that's why we'll cover a couple of these things we've covered before. Back in the bad old days, in the dark ages, the medieval times, when wizards ruled the world and we had SharePoint 2007, one of the common things that we would do before installing a patch into our SharePoint farm, and this is after sacrificing the chicken and all the other superstitious things we did, because patching SharePoint 2007 was downright scary, frightening, terrifying like. So one of the things that we would do after we made all of our sacrifices to our deities and all that kind of stuff is we would detach all of our content databases from our farm. And we did that for a couple of reasons. Number one, we did it because if everything exploded, and everything often did explode when patching SharePoint 2007, restoring your content databases was one less thing that you had to restore. It was just that much little you had to worry about as your boss is screaming at you and threatening you and all that kind of stuff. The other reason that we did it was that way we could control what order the content databases were upgraded, because then they wouldn't be upgraded as part of the configuration wizard part at the end. So we would run the patch on all of our farms, and there was this delicate, or all of our servers, there was this delicate dance, and I just can't talk tonight. There was this delicate dance that we had to run where we would run it on one server and then stop at a spot and then run it on another server and then stop at a spot and all that and get it all done, and the configuration wizard would then walk through and upgrade all of our databases. If we left them attached, it would just randomly pick them in order and serially, whichever one got to them first would upgrade them. That took a long time, and it wasn't always in the order that we wanted them to be in. So if we detached our content databases, we could run the configuration wizard. It would end very quickly. It would finish very quickly. And then we would attach our databases in the order that we wanted our site collections to come up online. Honestly, it was brilliant. And it was something that once I first heard about that with SharePoint 2007, I did it all the time. It just became the de facto way that I upgraded SharePoint. And it worked great. Starting with SharePoint 2010 and continuing with SharePoint 2013, that is no longer a good idea. I'm going to say it's a bad idea. And it's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a bad idea because when databases are attached, SharePoint 2013 and 2010 both have this idea of compatibility mode. The idea behind that being that the bits can be at a newer version than the databases. So your databases can be at RTM, but your bits could be at the March 2013 public update. And SharePoint is smart enough to understand how to render out, how to read those old databases, and so it doesn't need to upgrade them. So if you attach an old database to a newer farm, there's the risk that the newer SharePoint is going to look at that old database and go, yeah, I don't need to do anything with that. It's in compatibility mode. I'm not going to take any downtime. I'm just going to upgrade it, which is normally a good thing, except now your database isn't upgraded. So then you have to upgrade your database anyway, which is kind of a pain. The other reason that it's bad is because there are a bunch of things that happen when databases are mounted and dismounted. Your farm goes through and looks at all the site collections that are in there and does a bunch of inventory type things. There are timer jobs that kick off, that kind of stuff, that are completely unnecessary. There's no benefit from them in the context of patching. And so potentially if you detach your databases and reattach them, you won't get them upgraded, which is the thing that you need, but you will get a bunch of other stuff that you don't need. So that's why it's bad. So, but what I will tell you is it's also no longer necessary. And I told you the two reasons that we did it before was to protect our databases from a patch destroying them and shredding them, and so that we could control what order they were updated in. And we can already do that. So when we install the patches now, we don't have to run the configuration wizard right away. So we run the patch, it's on a server, and the databases are untouched, so there's no risk, there's no liability. The databases don't get touched until we run the configuration wizard at the end, and we don't have to run that right away. So they're not touched, we don't have to worry about backing them up and all that kind of stuff. Secondly, as soon as all of the servers in the farm are at the patched level, but before we run the configuration wizard, we can use the PowerShell commandlet upgrade SP content database to upgrade our content databases in whatever order we want to. So we still have that flexibility of doing them in the order we want, but without all this rigmarole of detach and reattach. Also, another added benefit of that is we can do multiples now. So we can have 2 or 3 databases upgrading at the same time, whereas before you could only attach, you can attach multiples now in 2007, you could only attach one. So if you want to control the order your databases are upgraded in, you can install the patch, and then before you run the configuration wizard, upgrade them all, upgrade part of them, do them more than one at a time, and then whatever ones you don't do when you run the configuration wizard, it will do the rest. And it will do them serially, and it will do them on one box, but you have that flexibility. So within the last couple of weeks, because of the March 2013 patch and some other patching things, I've talked to a couple of different customers that have wanted to do this. Now with 2013, and I've had to talk them out of it, I've had to do this whole same spiel. I'm getting a deja vu thing. I actually went through my notes to make sure that I didn't talk about this last week because I'm getting this deja vu thing. And with SharePoint 2013, we have the added benefit that we can upgrade search before the configuration wizard too. There's an upgrade SP search service application commandlet now also. So don't detach your databases anymore. That's just extra work. That's a fool's errand. Don't do that. So in the chat room, Doug says, I thought no B2B was a switch parameter on the PowerShell commandlet, so it was upgraded by default. So Doug is noticing that there's a switch no B2B, which is build to build, which is a patch upgrade. So it's upgraded by default. Yes, Doug, you're absolutely right. It should upgrade by default, but I've had a couple of people on the product team tell me that still might not happen. Even if you don't run the don't upgrade parameter, it still might not upgrade, depending on, and they didn't give me any examples, and I didn't argue with them because they're smarter than I am, but it might be something like one of those patches that got pulled back, like the April or June of last year patches, where like just the minorest number was incremented. That might be close enough that it doesn't upgrade. I don't know, but it's just, yeah, I don't for this context, I don't assume it's going to upgrade them. So, and again, some pretty smart folks told me I didn't have to do it, so I've stuck with it. So while we're talking about patching, let's go ahead and talk about this. So I had a couple people on my blog, on my patching post, talk about their experiences with the March 2013 public update. And I bring this up because a couple of people had similar experiences that I did. On 2 of the VMs that I have patched with the March 2013 patch, the BCS service application database has not upgraded. So it shows up even after I run the configuration wizard and all that kind of stuff. It still shows up in central admin as database and compatibility range upgrade is recommended. Everything seems to work, but I've still got that error in there. And there is no way that I know of to upgrade that database individually. So that's just something to keep an eye out for. I would watch for that. Check that database. If you're using the BCS or BDC, verify before you put the patch on that everything's good to go, because that was a mistake I made the first time I did this. I noticed it was broken afterwards, but didn't test it beforehand. But make sure everything's working, you know. And the other one that I've had break, but I think it was a VM issue, was the managed metadata. But check all that stuff before you put the patch on, and make sure that's all working. I don't know what the fix is for that. I haven't talked to anybody, but that's a pretty common thing. So another issue that I've seen is, I think with the workflow manager patch, a couple of people had problems with workflow not starting back up after they put the patch on, and apparently in both of those cases they just uninstalled it and reinstalled it, and that fixed it. So this is one of those things where it's always good to test, do this in a test environment, kind of build some confidence, figure out where the trouble spots are, so when it happens in production it's not one of those get me my brown pants sort of moments. We've all had those. So one of the things that came up is a few folks have noticed that this patch is no longer called a cumulative update. It is called a public update, or a PU. Unfortunate name. Unfortunate. I got nothing else to say about that. But a few folks have asked, you know, what the difference is and all that. If you guys don't already follow it, there's a guy, one of the escalation engineers at Microsoft, Stefan Grossner. He's from Germany, and he put a pretty good post out about that, on what the difference is between all of these patches. Essentially, what it comes down to is, you know, service packs are what we always know that they are. You should install them. They come out every, you know, year, 18 months, something like that. Both new functionality and fixes, all that kind of stuff. Do whatever, and then on any cycle. We have the cumulative updates, which are going to come out periodically, though he doesn't say in his article when they're going to come out. I guess he does say, every second month, though we didn't get any in February or December. But anyway, you should only install them if they fix something that you have that's broken. Otherwise, stay away. And then they've also, so then he introduces this new one, the public update. The public update, he says, is mostly security fixes, and you do need to install it. And the release cycle for those is once a month if it's required. So obviously it was required in March. And then we've got the critical on demand, which are the hot fixes, which are the oh my god, something's broken, we need to fix it immediately. So one thing that, put that on when you can. One thing that he does mention is, I think that the PUs are tested more thoroughly, and that's really what it comes down to. Is so he says the test cycle for a PU is much longer than a CU. So that's really where, we've all had these cumulative updates that have taken our farms out or done bad things. That's all because the testing cycle is so short, because they come out every other month. These public updates come out less frequently, potentially, so they get tested more. Doug in the chat room is saying tested is loosely defined. They have their testing matrices. I'm not going to convince you they catch everything, but as a developer, you know how this is. QA is tough. Trying to guess everything is tough. But it was good of Stefan to put that blog post out. Coincidentally, or I got it coincidentally, but there is another SharePoint Netcast podcast, whatever, by Hilton Giesenau from South Africa, And last year he had Stefan on his podcast, and Stefan described what he does and all that kind of stuff. Pretty interesting. I've been following Stefan's blog for a while, so it was interesting. I don't have a link to that interview right now, but if you go out to the Moss Show, if you look for that, it's an interesting thing to see what Stefan's got going on. But anyway, Stefan has released that blog post and told us what the difference is between all those different kinds of patches. All right. So we talked a little bit about, I think last week, about some folks having problems with the SharePoint market and getting the app stuff, all that set up, and then you go to it and it doesn't work. And I talked about how that's because there's not a web app with no host header listening for those replies, and that you can disable the default IIS site or stuff like that. So I've been talking to folks inside of Rackspace and some other SharePoint folks about that, and it seems there's mostly agreement on how to handle that. Most folks have been bitten by that whole deleting the default zone, the default IIS site, and having IIS cry itself to sleep and have to uninstall and reinstall and all that kind of stuff. So most folks, it seems, the way they handle that, they don't stop that default site. They put it on an odd port, and they put it on some port over 1,000. So like 8888, something like that. But I kind of wanted to visit that one because that was kind of a hot topic last week with that app domain coming up. So I wouldn't disable the default thing. I would just put it on a port that's not 80. Let SharePoint have that port. So this is one. Actually, let's work into that from here. So last Friday, Microsoft had a little webinar on the changes to the Microsoft Certified Solutions Master Program, which used to be the old MCM program, Microsoft Certified Master Program. And so they're putting that out for SharePoint 2013 now, though the Masters program is now going to not be specific to a version of the product. So there will not be SharePoint 2013 Masters, there will be SharePoint Masters, and the Master certification is valid for 3 years. So if you get your MCSM this year, it's good through 2016 for whatever happens. So there's some new things out there about that. I know there's some folks in the chat room that I've discussed this whole Masters thing with, people that are Masters curious. So I kind of wanted to bring that up because there's some really terrifying stuff in there for this round. So I've taken and passed the SharePoint 2013 admin exams, so that's good. You need those. And like Masters programs in the past, you also need some developer exams. And there will be 2 of those, 2.2 SharePoint developer exams. I also think that you're going to end up taking 2 web developer exams too. And I'm looking on the link that I sent you guys, and it doesn't have all that in there yet, but I'm pretty sure they talked about that in that slide. And then finally, you need to be a Windows 2012 MCSA or whatever, Solutions Architect or Solutions Associate or whatever, before you can. This year, before you can get the master certification, next year before you can even apply to take the classes. So if anybody's thinking about doing that master's program, there's like 7 exams that you got to take. It's pretty rough. If you have the SharePoint 2010 MCITP or something, if you took the 2 admin exams or something, there is a Windows 2012 upgrade exam, and that's the route that I'm going to go. That will be, now that the book is done, that will be my next hurdle to overcome. But that gets you that Windows certification in 1 exam. Otherwise, it's like 3 exams or something like that. So if you guys are looking for the whole Masters thing, it's pretty daunting. But everybody that I've known that's taken it has learned a lot and been very happy with it. So hopefully this year, 2013, I'm going to try to make a run for it and see if I can't get me some of that master goodness. The bad news for you guys is, if depending on when I take it, if I take the immersive exam, that's going to be 3 weeks in Redmond, and there will be no netcasts those weeks. I will be up to my eyeballs in other things, and otherwise it will be just 1 week, so we'll have to see. So, yeah, so a couple people in the chat room. So Ben's saying it's not the upgrade exam is not easy. I know 2 people who've taken the upgrade exam so far, Ben. Neither of them passed it the first time. One of them passed it the second time. So I think when I was at SP TechCon, Chris Beckett was in the audience there, and he said I think it took him twice to pass it, and it was a pretty rough exam. So yeah, I'm not looking forward to that one at all. So as that happens, we'll get closer. We'll let you guys know about that. But yeah, whatever week I'm going to be out at Redmond, there will be no Netcast that week. I might have somebody fill in for me. We'll do something like that, but we'll figure that out. Now, on the heels of that, and kind of the dovetailing into that, for those of you that are thinking about doing it or not, and just like to download free stuff, Microsoft has graciously put out for free an ebook on introducing Windows Server 2012. And it's a pretty good book. It's free. You can just download it, and they got it in about 6 different formats. And by 6, I think I mean 3. But it's a pretty good little ebook, and it talks about all the new changes to Windows 2012. And there's PDF, there's EPUB, there's Mobi, all that kind of stuff. I can tell you, so I've read most of the book, though I'm probably going to read through it again before I take that exam. For those of you that have not played with Hyper-V lately or some of the networking stuff, Windows 2012 adds some really great things, and it's very clear that much like SharePoint 2013 was geared to be the platform for Office 365, Windows 2012 was also geared to be that way. So Hyper-V's got all kinds of crazy failover things and all that. I was reading that ebook and I was really impressed. Very good stuff. And I've got a Kindle, and I think the Mobi version looks great on the Kindle. The stinky part about it is if you've got a Kindle, you should run out right now, and Amazon has this thing you can download called Send to Kindle, where you can just right click on a document, it'll convert it and send it to your Kindle. It's great for Word documents and PDFs and all that kind of stuff. It works great for Mobis also, except it will only, the Send to Kindle thing only will take files up to 50 meg. Anybody want to guess how big the Mobi for that Windows 2012 book is? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, it's 50.6 megabytes. It is 600K too large for Send to Kindle to work. So not a huge deal. The benefit to doing the Send to Kindle thing is then it puts it in the little Kindle cloud, so you can see it on all your Kindle devices and Whisper Sync and all that kind of stuff. But since it was 600K too large, I just had to do the USB cable thing and copy it over. But highly recommended if you've got a Kindle or whatever, grab that ebook. It's really good stuff. And if you're going to be a SharePoint guy or gal, you're going to need to know Windows 2012 pretty well. And there is some really great stuff in there. So check that out. Faux show. All right, another topic that comes up periodically is just what all we can do to those SharePoint databases in SQL. Now, we all know, as bright, above average SharePoint folks, you guys already know that you're not supposed to do anything to any of the databases in SharePoint. It's just a really, really bad idea. You certainly can't change any of them. Add indexes or change schemas or any of that kind of stuff, with the exception of the logging database. They'll let you do that one. They're pretty understanding about that. They threw us a bone. But this TechNet article spells out all of the things that you can't do. And I mean, it lays it all out. Here are all the things that you can't do. And it even calls out, and I would love to just kiss right on the mouth whoever put this in there. There's even a part at the bottom that's the read operations addendum that says, no, really, don't even read the databases, and here's why. You can accidentally or unexpectedly lock things by doing reads. Knock it off. Don't read the databases. Now, this is important. I get in front of crowds a lot. I talk to a lot of people, and I can't remember where it was. I think it was at the SharePoint conference in Anaheim. Shane and I were doing a session, and a guy in the audience argued with me about that. And he's like, no, you can read. It's cool. It's no problem. And I'm like, no, really, you can't. He's like, oh, it's fine. And I don't think, there wasn't a knowledge base article like this out there. to back me up. So that kind of stunk. But anyway, it's out there now. You can't read from production databases. You can't change them. You can't do whatever. So by all means, for test environments, do whatever. Get in there, get your hands dirty, screw things up to your heart's content. But for production databases, don't do it. And if your DBAs ever get some dumb ideas about going into SQL and fixing SharePoint databases, oh, we did a thing with the thing in the query analyzer. We put some indexes on your SharePoint databases, and it's going to run great now. No, Gomer, it's not. Here's the article that tells you why. Don't do that. So keep that one in your hip pocket for those DBAs that like to cause problems and fix things. Okay, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about was a thing that I experienced last week at a customer, and this is one of those things that I wanted to bring up because it's something that I've talked about forever and thought I understood how it worked, and then turns out I was completely wrong about how it works. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. So starting with SharePoint 2010, we now had the ability to make our index servers redundant, and we had the ability, the index servers became stateless, which meant if you lost an index server, it was okay. You could just spin up another one, or another one could take over, because the index servers themselves didn't have anything on them. And that was different than SharePoint 2007. That was a vast improvement. And so one of the things that we could do starting in SharePoint 2010 and continuing to 2013 was we could take our index file, which is really index files, and we could split it up across our query servers. The hope with that is that, if you've got a really, really big index file, you could split it up across 2 or 3 query servers, and then when users did a query, all 3 of those servers would query their part of the index, put the results together, and you would get faster query results. That's a pretty good idea. But then if you don't have all of the index in one spot, then if you lose any one of those 3 servers, everything's broken. So they introduced also the functionality of mirroring. So now you can have your index in multiple spots, and then you can mirror it, and that way if you lose any one server, you don't lose the only copy of any part of the index. Pretty clever, good stuff. And obviously the whole reason for that is fault tolerance, so that if any one server crashes, everything keeps working. So I had a customer get a hold of me and said, yeah, we've done all that. They had 2 query servers, so they had 2 index partitions, and then each index partition was mirrored on the other server. Okay, so that way when they do queries, the queries are fast because both servers are working on them, but if either server goes down, they still have 100% of the index. Good, and everything's working fine until one of the servers went down, and then everything wasn't fine anymore. And the customer was talking to me about some problems they were having, and I'm like, that's not right. The whole reason for all this is so that you don't have problems. You can't have problems. Are you doing this right? So got in there, poked around, and here's what we found out. And here's the part that I wanted to tell you guys about, because it didn't go down exactly the way that I thought it was going to go down. And so we had a test environment, and we got everything working. He had multiple content sources because he had some different websites and some file shares and all that kind of stuff. Did an index, did a crawl, everything was fine. We did some queries, everything was good. Then we went into his hypervisor and we just killed one of his query servers. Just dead. Just power off. Are you sure? I'm sure. Done. So in theory, we still had 100% of the index because we had one index partition and a mirror of the other partition. We're all good. Index server's still up because that was a separate server. What we found was queries continued to work. Queries continued to work fine. Users could go in, they could do queries, they could get results, everybody was happy. What we found was indexing was not fine. And what would happen was the indexes would kick off and they would start, and the index server would try to propagate the index file, and one of the servers is missing. What I expected would happen is that the index server would just fail gracefully and understand that there were mirrors and everything was going along, and then when the server came online, everything would copy over. Instead, it gave me a bunch of problems about the query server not responding, and the worst part of all is the indexes never stopped. So we had crawls that would take 2 minutes maybe to run, and we let it run for over half an hour, and they would never run, or they would never finish because this query server was gone. The indexer was trying to write the index out and it couldn't. So yeah, Doug saying in the chat room kind of ruins the point of mirroring, sort of, and it all works out. So again, while all this was happening, queries were still working. Queries were working fine for about 15 minutes, and then at some point, about 15 minutes into this, queries broke. We got a bunch of error pages, and then right away they came back. So there was some point along the line where the search infrastructure realized that server was gone, and then in the search interface, everything went from being everything's okay and thumbs up to we've got a server that's not responding. So there was, I don't know if it's a timer job or a timeout or something, but definitely there was this tipping point where the query server hiccuped for a minute, came back, and the interface was telling us there was a problem. But we still couldn't finish any of those crawls. What we found out the fix was when the server goes down, so in this guy's case it was, you know, query 2, go into the search service application, and this was SharePoint 2010, so we could do it with central admin, but go remove that server. And so we went in, we removed that server from the search topology. Indexes are still running now at 40 some minutes. Queries are still going fine. And the search topology thing, which as we'd been creating things, had been taking 5 to 7 minutes to run, ended up taking like 10 or 12 minutes to run. We removed the failed index server, and then everything popped back in. So as soon as that failed index server was out, you know, 10 or 12 minutes later, then, you know, within another minute or two, those crawls all finished up, everything was good to go, all the errors went away in search, queries still worked, all that, and then we just brought the server back online and added it back in. So kind of the moral to this story is I thought it would all just fail over gracefully and there would be no intervention. It fails over kind of gracefully. Your end users mostly probably won't be impacted, but you will need to go in, either bring that server back online or remove it from the topology. In SharePoint 2010, you can remove it from the topology in central admin. In SharePoint 2013, you need to do it in PowerShell. Pull that out. So Fiza in the chat room is asking, is there a way to automate this failover? Probably so. So I'm guessing that there is some way with PowerShell or something to determine when a server's not responding, and then certainly with PowerShell there's a way to remove that server from the search topology. I would probably not automate that though, because again, end users aren't impacted, queries still work fine, and hopefully this doesn't happen so often that you need to have an automated process. It's only going to happen once or twice and you'll just have to pop in and remove it. That's the hope. But I just kind of, you know, this is one of those things where we all kind of thought we knew how it worked. Turns out that wasn't at all how it worked, so I kind of wanted to bring that up and mention that to you guys. Okay, and Doug, if any hurricanes make it to Chicago, Doug in the chat room is worrying about for disaster recovery. He says, you know, the hurricane's getting closer. He's in Chicago. If the hurricane gets to Chicago, you got bigger worries. And me too, because I'm not too far away from Chicago. Okay, so that is all of the topics. I told you we didn't have much tonight. Do have some shameless self-promotion. Those of you that are on Facebook and all that probably saw this. In 2 weeks' time, I will be in Australia speaking at the Australian SharePoint Conference in Sydney. And it's too bad that Bruce Albany left, because he is also in Australia, and hopefully he will be there in 2 weeks as well. So going down there, doing a couple of sessions. I'm only doing the Sydney one. They had one in Auckland too, and just with the timing and all that, it wasn't going to work out. They're a week apart, and but I'm going to be down there for a few days doing some stuff. And if you're in Australia, go to the Sydney conference and say hey. I'm going to be there for both days of that. Netcast wise, I'm not sure what's going to happen. I don't know. I haven't booked my flights yet. Yeah, I know. So I don't know how that's all going to work because it takes a couple of days to get down there. So keep an eye out for that. But I will be down there. I'll be doing a session on installing and configuring the Office web apps, and then I'm also going to be doing the old reluctant DBA, the SQL DBA session for SharePoint admins. I'll be doing those down there. Probably going to be doing some book signings and stuff. We're going to try to get some SharePoint 2010 books down there. The SharePoint 2013 book won't be out yet. But definitely, if you're in Australia, if you're in Sydney, goodness sakes, you got to come by and say hey. So that'll be cool. I'm looking forward to that. Not looking forward to the 40 some hours in a plane, 50 some hours, but looking forward to seeing Australia. So I kind of mentioned it before. The Professional SharePoint 2013 administration book is chugging along now that the folks at Wiley, the nice, fine, considerate folks at Wiley, are no longer waiting on us crappy authors. That process is just flying by. So hopefully that will be out in a month, I think, is what we're looking at. But it looks like everything's good to go for that. So you can go to toddklindt.com/pro-sp2013 admin. That will take you to the Amazon page for that. You can pre-order that. I will also be selling signed physical copies on my blog, so look out for that. Once I get figured out how I'm going to do all that, we'll be sending those out. Wiley will also be selling undrm'd ebook versions of that, and so you can get those, and those will work on your Kindle or whatever. Hopefully they'll be less than 50 meg, though I don't know. So you can do the send to Kindle deal. I've also thought about selling those on my website, but I don't know how that's going to work, so we'll have to see about that. But anyway, pre-ordered on Kindle, do whatever. Doug wants a digitally signed electronic copy. If you got the PDF version, I could probably do that. I could probably go in there with the Acrobat and write something naughty about Shane in there. But very excited about getting that out. The cover looks awesome. The content's, arguably not horrible. Certainly no worse than the 2010 stuff. But that's so close to being done. So close. All right, so not to make you folks in the United States feel bad because I'm going down and talking to the Australians, I will be at TechEd in New Orleans in June talking about SharePoint. So if you're going to be in TechEd, go down there. You can go to http://northamerica.msteched.com and sign up for that. Shane and I will be there. I assume Rackspace will have a booth and things like that. FISA in the chat room, ever trying to screw me out of the scant amount of royalties that I get now. I think I get 37 cents a book, something like that. And so FISA's already trying to find a way to make that less. She's saying I should run some contests and give away some free books. Yeah, I'm going to do that. I don't know how many free 2010 books I gave away on the Netcast, so I am sure I will find some way to give away some free SharePoint 2013 books when I get them. We'll see. We'll figure something out. I'm good like that. I'll do it. No promises, FISA, that you specifically will get one, but somebody whose name, somebody will get one. I promise. So be at TechEd. Right now, I'm not entirely sure what all sessions I'm doing. I'm doing a pre-conference session, an all-day one for sure. Not sure what else is going on for that. So we had a baby due the last time it came out. So Lori reminded me that I had a contest about the name and birthday, and she was the winner of one of those. So not to make, so the folks in Australia, they're going to get to see the Todd show. Folks in New Orleans, whoever comes from North America, they're going to get to see that. I can hear my European friends. They're a little sad. Never fear. I will also be at TechEd in Madrid, and that's the last week in June, I think. So you can go to http://europe.msteched.com and sign up for that one. So I'm going to be taking it all over. 3 continents so far this year. You'll be able to see me at. So that is all I had for tonight. Thanks to everybody. The chat room has been lively. You folks, except for the ones begging me for free books. So have more content next week. We should be good to go again in 2 weeks with the whole Australia thing. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but keep out on Twitter and all that. So thanks, everybody. Have a good week, and I will talk to you next week. Thanks. Bye.